Welcome to the Being Known podcast with my friend, Dr. Kurt Thompson, MD.
My friend, Pepper Sweeney.
We are here to discover and explore what it means to be truly known. Hey, Kurt.
Hey, Pep. I must say, it's been a little while since we've recorded, and
Yes.
I was so desperately tempted to just say, my friend, the most beautiful man in the world, which reminds me that we're to our listeners,
Yes.
we've begun to have some conversation about merch.
We have.
And about some swag. And I made it a
Yes.
suggestion about like having a T-shirt printed with your likeness on the T-shirt and just the most beautiful man in the world.
This may be the worst idea that you've ever come up with. But listen, I'm here for all your ideas. You could just keep throwing them out there, and yes.
Oh my gosh! Reminds me of a conversation friends of mine were having once, and they were brainstorming about things, and they said, "Just remember, there's no bad ideas." And one of the other persons in the group said, "Like, wait a minute, aren't there some bad ideas?"
Yeah, there's some really bad ideas. Yes.
Yeah.
I mean, look at the history of the world. There have been some pretty bad ideas out there.
Oh my goodness!
But Kurt, it is so good to be with you, and you and I and Amy always normally have some nice connecting time prior to our recording, and it was cut a little short today. And Amy said, "I wish we had more time." And I'm thinking, man, that could be my memoir. I mean, I'm just, I wish we had more time. I wish we had more time. And by that, I mean time together. And I know that's what she meant too. I just wish we had more time together, but I'm grateful for the time that we do have. I'm grateful for the time that we have today with the most beautiful listeners in the world.
Oh, dude,
and,
right on.
And we are continuing our conversation. We are in this season, and we are in this season all about rupture and repair. And thank you all for your comments and your messages. And I know Kurt's been hearing a lot also from just how impactful that this season has already been for you. And we always love to hear from you. Please leave us a review or someplace on social media. Just leave a little comment. Those things are always very encouraging to us. And to know that we're talking about things that you want to hear. And we are continuing a conversation today that we had part one of last week about timing, tempo, and time. And Kurt, with that, I'd love for you to jump in and let's get this party started.
Yeah. Well, Pep, we were talking just before we started to record this notion that so much of what life, as we might say, life in the spirit, the life of the gospel, the life of being fully human is about being repairers of ruptures. And that, like, we sometimes don't necessarily think that, well, wait, Kurt, if we're making pottery, if we're painting, if we're building a new curriculum, like, that's not rupture. We would say, actually, every act of creation of beauty is a move of repairing the rupture of Genesis 3. Because it is an expression of gratitude and joy and love in response to what the King has done. And so even when we are just doing our creative work, and by that I mean living in response to being loved, we are always in position to be looking for ruptures to repair. We're always doing that. And so a couple things just to say that about this is that I'm hearkening back to the very first episode that was recorded live, in which we kind of invited the audience as we were wrapping up to go into the world looking for where are there ruptures for us to repair, to become repairers of ruptures. We're not just trying to repair ruptures, but we're trying to become really effective repairers in the world. And that we can't really say too much about this. And that gets me to the second thing, which is that I think, from last episode, this one now, and then in the ones that are coming, I think we're going to hear a lot of things that we're going to repeat because they bear repeating. Because evil is all about disintegration. Evil is all about ruptures. Evil is looking for all kinds of ways, even to rupture the repair efforts themselves. And so we're going to hear some things over and over again, I think, not to the point where I trust it's not going to become like watching paint dry, where it's going to become boring, but to recognize that there are some things that we need to hear over and over again in the presence of community for us to be encouraged to go about those things.
With that in mind, Kurt, can you take just a brief second and talk about what's happening to your neuropathons when you are repeating these things over and over again?
Yeah, I mean, I think just take an example of my friend Byron. When this is 25 years ago, we were playing basketball, broke his elbow, one of the worst kinds of fractures you can have. I think we probably talked about this on this podcast before. Surgically repaired, he's great, good to go, so forth and so on, and then, we're playing later and everything's actually fine, but somebody would hit his elbow or he'd nick his elbow and it would just drop him to his knees.
Yeah.
And the fear would be, of course, like, oh, is it happening again? We say, like, no, but the bone remembers. And we will work to repair ruptures, but some of those ruptures are such that something might happen in life that like remind us of the rupture, or that catch us off guard, or at the right, that kind of like I'm at the wrong place at the wrong time, and it just, the bone remembers, my heart remembers something. Sure. And so when Jesus says to Peter, no, it's not just 7 times, like you have to, this is about 70 times 7. This is about becoming living, breathing forgiveness. This is about becoming a repairer. Neurally, what's happening is that I can, in the course of repair, I can create new neural networks that are actually more thickly and more resiliently connected to each other than they were even before the rupture. This is what this is what rat research would show us, that they're the thickening, that we build resilience that is evidenced in our neural networks themselves. This does not prevent old neural networks still from remembering things, but our willingness to continue to, with intention, do the work of repair, even in our mind, right? If you and I have a rupture, like we talked about in the opening, in our opening episode, about the little rupture that the three of us had, or that I had, and we were working on that.
Right.
I now frequently go back to that moment and relive all that, and am like I am even more fully strengthened in our relationship, because I am taking the time to remember that this is what we did. And even in remembering the repair, it thickens. It builds resilience. It builds greater confidence. And this is why it's so important for us to be mindful of the need for practicing this. And so even once we have repaired something, we've worked on a repair with someone, it's always a good idea. Like, you can go back the next day or a week later and you call them up and you say, hey, I just want to let you know, it still rings, really beautifully with me. I'm just so grateful for the repair work we did last week. In this way, we are doubling down on the repair itself, because we are remembering and strengthening the new neural network, and we are protecting ourselves against what might happen when your elbow that is now healed, but feels the pain of the fracture all over again. When that happens. And so, it's a great question. And so, for when we enter into this, we can be, they're part of us, like, when we have to enter into repair. I mean, this past couple of weeks ago, there was an incident that happened in one of our confessional communities in the practice where there was a rupture, and I was the responsible party. I was the one who caused it.
Imagine
because
that. I can't.
Dude, like, I don't have to imagine it. I was there. Right. I'm just remembering it now.
Yes. And
I'm just so grateful that, the member of the group was, open to entering into that repair work. But, if I think about it, I'm like, but then I think about the repair work that was done. And as we're going to get to in the next couple of episodes, how the implication of what happens in the community as well. why that makes it an important part of this, and like why community is plays such an important role when it comes to ruptures and repairs. So that gives us some idea about what's happening neurally for us. There's an integration. I'm not just connecting those fractured neural networks. I'm also adding new ones. We're building new ones to come to strengthen that. And so it's not unlike what happens if, you have a bridge structure that, malfunctions. Like you don't just rebuild the bridge the way it was. You're like, oh, we've learned from this. We need to do something to actually strengthen the structure of the bridge. And so now the bridge is actually even going to be better than it was before it had its rupture. And this is what's happening with relationships. And in today's episode, we're leaning into the second part of what does it mean for us to think about the timing, the tempo, and the time it takes for repair to take work. And the first question that we come to when you find yourself being part of a rupture, maybe you're what we would call you're the offending party. You're the one who's caused it, or you're the offended party. You're the one to whom the rupture, or maybe it's a mutual thing. The first question that we want to ask is like, what does it mean for us to take initiative to repair? How do I start that? And what exactly is it that we are initiating? When we say, yes, I want to initiate repair with a person, and one of the first questions that comes up is like, well, whose job is it? Well, I didn't start this fight. I didn't cause the rupture. They should have to come. Like I'm thinking like, I'm thinking like, oh yeah, I'm like 10 years old.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I first of all, just to say, like, we've all of our listeners, like, we've been there. Like, is it my job to initiate this? I think it's their job to initiate this, because if it's my job, all the questions that flood. If I initiate it, am I just kind of opening myself up for more rupture, right? Or do I come out of a family where I'm the peacemaker and my job is to make sure that everybody's okay? So of course I'm going to be the one who says like, well, I'm sorry, even if I didn't do something wrong, but I feel bad. And so like, well, whose job is it? And so this, as we encounter this, we think about this, we do ask a number of questions. We want to know what does belong to me and what belongs to the other. Now, part of what's hard, and these are important questions. What belongs to me? And it's easier for me sometimes to just say, well, none of this belongs to me because I didn't start it. It all belongs to them. Or I might be on the other side of this, like it all belongs to me. I am fully and totally responsible for everything that has happened here. And so it's really important for us to pause, take a breath, and be curious about this, about these questions. What does belong to me? In the world of recovery, right? The recovery from addiction, right? We ask like, well, what's on my side of the road and what's on the other person's side of the road? And, there is the part of me that wants to answer that question explicitly and clearly and plainly so that I know that, like, nope, that's not mine. I am not going to, because I don't want to have to deal with anything that doesn't belong to me. Or maybe I'm primed to do just the opposite. That's all my. So it is important, and sometimes it's helpful for us as we are gonna. If I'm gonna repair with someone else, I'm actually gonna have a conversation, perhaps with another party, to say, I really want to figure out like what belongs to me here. And we can't always know all of what belongs to the other party. We can't always know that, but we can begin to discern what belongs to me. And one of the things that always belongs to me is my response to this. And what if my response is one of anger or hurt? That's going to be important for me, as we'll find out, as we've talked about. I need to be able to have a space where I can process that, name those things, so I can know what belongs to me and be clear, and so that I'm staying on my side of the road and making sure that I'm not entering onto the other person's side of the road to take up stuff that belongs to them. I'm a person who would be more than happy to, like, typically, take on, I'm like all the way over onto the shoulder of the other side of the road,
right,
taking care of other people's stuff. One of the things, too, then, that we're also paying attention to as we initiate, as we think about this, and we're processing what belongs to me, what belongs to the other, and doing that in a spirit of, like a non-anxious spirit, being observational, not being contemptuous, not being angry, not being hurt. I need to come to that question at ease, which is not easy to do, and so it takes time to come to that question. But one of the other things we want to pay attention to are what we call power gradients when we are working to repair ruptures. There, in every system, including the system that I have with my friend with whom there has been a rupture, every system has a power gradient. In families, there are parents and children, and where necessary, it is often the case where parents are the ones who, even when your children are the ones who perhaps caused the rupture, it is incumbent upon us as parents to be the ones who are thinking about doing the work of, like, I'm actually the parent. I always will be the parent, and so it's my job to be the one who's considering, what belongs to me and what belongs to them, and I will likely be the one who starts a conversation with them. I will be the one who initiates this. How many of us as parents think, like, I'd like my 6-year-old to apologize to me? Now, I might not think about that about my 18-month-old or my 3-year-old, although I might think about it, especially if they can talk. I'm certainly going to think about it if it's my 18-year-old. What if it's my 40-year-old? So it's challenging. So to acknowledge this is challenging, that there is a power gradient, but as the parent, I'm going to want to be the one who's hovering, this hovering presence of the Spirit that we read about in this first and second verse of Genesis chapter 1. I'm going to be hovering in the sense, not hovering overbearing, but I want to be present to what's happening and aware that in this particular system, I, as a parent, will often be the one who takes initiative. As my children grow older, they will be the ones, and hopefully what we will be doing in my family is talking about these kinds of things, and so my children will be aware that when they have been the ones who have been the offending party, that they're going to take the initiative to step in and say, hey, could we talk about what happened? Could we talk about what happened? But even as a parent, I might still be doing that. With organizations and systems, it's, for those of you who are leaders, who are, you're a boss, you have employees, you're a pastor, but you're a middle manager and you have people who report to you. It's always important to remember that there is a power gradient. Every time there are ruptures, the person who sits atop the power gradient is the one who is going to be most capable of discerning who needs to take initiative with these kinds of ruptures. And then with peers, of course, it's tricky. We don't always know, and we don't, because if the power gradient isn't clear. Let me just stop and check. Am I being clear about this?
Yeah, you're being clear. I'm understanding. I'm following. Yeah. So there's, in every relationship, in every family, and every work environment, and everywhere where there's rupture that needs to be repaired, there's a power gradient. Yeah. And we have to figure out what part of the rupture that we own, like what is ours, and then we have to figure out what part of you start to feel, am I supposed to be the one that goes and says something? Do I need to, they just hurt me. Do I need to go and straighten this out? And you figure out what the power gradient is. But now we're at peer to peer, and that gets a little bit more confusing maybe.
Right. Well, I think here's the point. I think that the issue for me is that, like, for instance, I was having a conversation with a patient this past week who is in the middle of a situation with an adult child, and the adult child is not well. And the parent, my patient, is sometimes easily tempted to want to, like, take on and do all the work.
Yeah.
Emotionally. Mm-hmm. But what's most important is not that for that parent to effectively repair the rupture, for the rupture to be effectively repaired, actually is going to take place because the parent is choosing not to do their adult child's work. And so it's, if that makes sense.
Yes.
They're not going to apologize for things that their child thinks they should apologize for. They are not going to agree with their child with things that their child thinks that because you don't agree with me, then you don't love me, and so forth and so on. But the fact is that the parent is actually doing effective repair work by not doing their child's work.
Right.
But the fact that they are thinking about and mindful of and being curious about, where is the power gradient in this? Where is the power gradient? And so it's not even just that, like, especially with peers, that I can discern it all the time. What is most important is, though, that I'm curious about this and that I'm open to this, that I'm paying attention to this. Because even in the repair work itself, we can name, I know that we're peers, and I'm wondering if either you or I are feeling like we're in the up position or the down position here, like who feels like they're has more advantage or more disadvantage. We can talk about that. Yeah. But always to recognize that that's in play, and paying attention to that is going to be important. I think it's also important for us. Again, these are all things that we are paying attention to as we enter into, as we take initiative. This is all under taking initiative, right. Things that we're considering, which is a lot.
Yeah.
You're thinking, like, Jesus, did Jesus say something about this in the gospel? Is there a checklist that I can go through?
Right.
I can have it on my iPhone that I can take with me when I go do this? The answer is no. The answer is this is the kind of work it takes for us to become professional human beings. It takes this kind of kneading of the dough, if you will. And the other thing we have to pay attention to is that this repair work is in a way is helping us prevent evil from gaining a foothold. I need to be aware of my temptation to the pleasure of keeping a record of wrongs. Dude, we've talked before about how, like, oh yeah, as it turns out, I like holding grudges.
Right.
You want to say something?
No, I just that awareness of the pleasure that you take of that someone may take of holding the record of wrongs. Putting yourself in the higher position of the power gradient in that way.
Yeah,
keeping somebody under your thumb, because that, even if it's in your own mind, spinning it around. Yeah.
Yeah, well, that's mostly that's a lot of times where it is. Like, I'd be too ashamed to tell somebody else, like, to admit, like, yeah, I'm keeping this person, on the rack in my head. I'd be too ashamed of that. So instead, I just do it in the privacy of my own mind.
Sure.
And I skip, like, I jump from verse 4 to verse 6 in 1 Corinthians 13, because verse 5 is where Paul says, love keeps no record of wrongs. I'm like, no, I'm just going to be like Thomas Jefferson, just cut that part out of the scriptures. And there are, what we call conscious and non-conscious disintegration states. Like, when I'm consciously disintegrating is when I'm thinking about how I have been wronged.
Okay.
I'm thinking about, like, I am thinking about this. What I often don't recognize is that I'm actually activating increased stress hormones in my own brain when I do this. I'm actually making the environment more challenging for my brain when I keep a record of wrongs. I'm consciously doing that. And then we talk about a non-conscious way of, like, this sense that I don't pay attention. I deny that I've wronged someone or that I've been wronged. Right, this is the other thing. This is the other side of the equation that we can jump on. Like, so I'm paying all the attention to I was wronged or I've wronged somebody, or I pay no attention to it. And both of those are ways for me to cope with my distress about the rupture.
Right.
And in some respects, on one side, I'm consciously keeping a record of it. On another side, I'm non-consciously keeping a record of it because I'm working so hard to keep it out of my conscious awareness. Like, either way I turn, dude, like, I lose. It's just, yeah. So we have to pay attention to that as well. And then we move to, as we're preparing to enter into this, asking this question. We've asked this before. We ask this question a lot. What do you want? And we have to name our desire for the relationship. Ideally, at the completion of this repair, what is it that I want? I want to know. I want to know that we are really connected.
Yeah, I got to say, I almost feel like you're the doctor. So,
please, if I had a nickel, not alone for every time somebody says this to me.
No, but I mean, I think I almost feel like that what do you want needs to come earlier in this process. Because if what you want is repair, it's going to affect all of these things that you're talking about.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, sure. I think at one level you're absolutely right. Yep, we always want to, like, again, this is why we say we walk out of our houses every morning looking for ruptures to repair.
Right.
So I want that to be what I want all day, every day. At the same time, just think about it developmentally. When somebody hurts me, or when I've hurt somebody else, but when somebody hurts me in particular, when there's a rupture, it is often difficult for me to name, because the first thing I want is I want to smack them right in the face. That's what I want.
Yeah.
I want to hurt them. I want to be mean to them. All the things I want. And if I do not first name those things, I can too prematurely name that I want repair, and those things go underground, and then they show up later. As we like to say, ultimate repair was made on the backside of Good Friday and then into Resurrection Day. But if Jesus does not first go into the temple and throw things around, I'm not sure he's going to get to Golgotha. When you ask him, when he's turning tables over, what does he want? I'm not sure that's the question that anybody's going to ask him at the moment. I think he's pretty clear that I want you out of all the things that he names. There is a certain sense in which he's working out his lament in order for him to get to repair. And this is why it's crucially important for us to notice that when we have these other elements of our lives, of our grief, that we have to name these things so that we can then turn and set his face like stone toward Jerusalem. But even there, he was going to have work to do.
Right.
And so I really get it that we want to be able to name. This is what I long for, but I also have to recognize that I can do that in a sequence that doesn't let me work through the other necessary stuff first.
Yeah.
I also want to name what I'm afraid of. I need to name, I'm afraid that you're not going to want to repair things with me. I'm afraid of that. I'm afraid that this is going to end in disaster. I have a story that I'm telling that you're just going to walk out of the room. And I'm really afraid of that. But I want nothing more than to be more deeply connected to you when we are done with this conversation. Or I want you to be in a better place as an employee when we get done with this conversation. There's a range of different things. And we have to practice naming what we want. And we often don't. And so that's another layer of practice that we have to enter into. We have to name concretely what my fears are, but also what my longings are. And then we get to the question of timing. We've said that this timing, tempo, and time. When do we initiate? And different ruptures are going to require different tactics of timing. It varies according to the nature and the context of the rupture, its severity, or its public or private continuum. Something, you hurt me because of a text that you sent to me, or maybe you said something to me in front of a group of friends. And so that also, the level of how jarring this can be. How much shame is accumulated. So, when do I start to initiate is going to depend upon maybe some extra work I have to do with other people. If it feels pretty severe. It varies according to the relational context. It's going to be a different thing that I do with a peer than if I'm the dad of my 6-year-old or my 16-year-old. Those are going to be different. And then especially we get back to the power gradient question. If it's a systemic thing, when I had to repair and when I've had to do this repair of ruptures in the context of these confessional communities, I have to remember that I don't just have a rupture with the person with whom I had the rupture. Everybody else in the room witnesses this. So it's as if dad gets mad at one of the kids and somehow the other kids are not at all affected by this.
Right.
And so I actually have repair work to do with everybody in the room. You're like, goodness, are you serious? Yeah. Congratulations.
Yeah.
And so there are challenges in initiating repair, what we call fearful avoidance. So I'm going to avoid it because I'm too afraid of entering into the feelings that I know that are going to come up when we start to enter into repair. There's what we call fearful eagerness. All right, that's the part of me that wants to repair things right away.
Right.
Because I'm afraid of sitting with the feelings that I now have. So we name that. It's important to name that. It's a challenge because I can have these imagined catastrophic outcomes, these stories that I tell, which also then leads to the importance of slowing our pace. Breathing. Knowing it's important for us to have other people by whom we're known that we can check in with and say, hey, John, I have to have a repair. I got to do work with Sarah, or I got to do work with Bill. Can you help me process this a bit? Because I know I want to figure out a lot of these things that we've just talked about. I want to figure that out. So I'm asking for help. And so that outside co-regulating brain can be really, really important for us. And so in all of this way, we're ensuring that we've done the appropriate amount of preliminary work. We've worked through our grief that we've talked about. We're bringing my middle prefrontal cortex back online so that my amygdala, my brainstem are not in charge of this. And then we get to, so that there's the timing. We say, okay, now I'm ready to enter into this. And then there's going to be a certain tempo, the frequency of the interaction that we need in order to make the repair. And all of this varies according to all the things that we've just talked about. In some respects, the repair may take one conversation, but there is a tempo within that conversation as well. I want to hurry up and have this conversation because I want to get through it. That's when we want to slow our pace, check in with the other. How are we doing? Even checking in, how are we doing in the course of this? The tempo of a single conversation. Sometimes it takes multiple conversations, and that's difficult for us because I'd like to get it done in one conversation.
Sure.
But if I'm the offended party, one conversation may not be enough. So I'm going to need to ask for yet another thing and another thing and another thing. And so in some respects, we're like burn victims, right? We have burn, and then we have multiple surgeries over time that are required for the ultimate healing of my scars. And then the tempo of interaction may vary over time, right? How frequently we're going to talk about this. Am I going to talk about this today and then tomorrow and the next day and the next day? Or as over time I'm going to spread this out. We've said here before, sometimes parents can have experiences with their kids in which they repair a rupture. It happened on Saturday afternoon and they think the rupture's done, but it's really good for the dad to go back or the mom to go back the next day and say, I remember, I just want to say, I've been thinking about you since what happened yesterday. And I just want you to know I'm really sorry about what I did. And I'm really glad that we had that repair. So thank you for that. So you're reminding the child, right? Mm-hmm. So we're thickening. We're thickening the neural networks of the repair. And then maybe 5 days later, like you've had a stretch of 5 days of really great relationship with your child, and you go back and say, I just want to tell you something. I remember what happened last Saturday. Man, I'm just so glad you're my son. I'm so glad you're my daughter. I'm so glad that you're able to forgive me. I'm so glad that we're able to work things out. These kinds of things are ways in which we are interacting. There's a tempo over time. And it takes a frequency, a certain number of times of interactions to make that repair. And then, we recognize that these things take time. My friend's elbow fracture did not heal in 6 hours or 6 days or even 6 weeks. And it's going to depend upon whether or not this is a benign slight. That's different than if somebody has an affair. That's different than if somebody has serial affairs. We're going to talk more about that later, about what it means to repair in the face of the kind of ruptures that are seriously catastrophic. We also say that we want to be able to, just negotiate over time with the person with whom we were repairing. How long is this going to take? I still need some time. Okay. How much longer is this going to take? At some point we say, I would like to know that we can move as we can, and that's going to take that's going to be ongoing conversation, as we say, the more painful the wound, often there's this greater urgency for repair on the part of the offending party. I want to fix this right away, and also the greater amount of time required for the offended party. The greater the wound. It's important to remember that. Going to continue to remember what we want. So over the course of that repair time, we may discover that what we want changes. It expands. It enlarges. Or I discover, actually, I want more of this or more of that I didn't even know that I wanted when we first started this repair process. And so we're going to name those measurable behaviors that indicate what's taking place. We want to limit, this is important, we want to limit the temptation for repair to be reducible to like, I feel safe.
Talk more about that.
As we may have said on this podcast before, we all kind of understand when we say things like, I don't feel safe. That language in our culture can become unhelpful and actively disintegrating, because the reality is that I don't know what you mean when you say you feel unsafe. It's a word that stops having, it's a phrase that no longer has meaning for us. What I do know is if you say, I'm afraid. When you say you feel unsafe, it puts the onus of your becoming safe completely on me. If you say you're afraid, there are things that I know that I can do, but it also means that there are things that you can do as the offended party. And that means that, it's kind of like if we've used this metaphor before, if I have this near drowning event as a 4-year-old, but I want to get back in and learn how to swim eventually.
Right.
Like, the pool is not going to apologize for holding water. Like, I might be afraid. I'm going to have to take responsibility for that and do what is necessary to gradually, while afraid, move toward repair, knowing that there are things that I can do even while I'm afraid. This does not dismiss the fear. It does not ignore it. It's still like, yeah, there's a part of me that is afraid to do this. Of course. And if the person I'm working with is mindful of that, then they're going to be receptive to that, open to that. And so I want to limit that. So the language is like, I don't feel safe, is something we have to be very cautious about. And I would invite people to even consider not using it. That doesn't tell me what you do feel. That's what you don't feel. I can be much more helpful. It's be much more effective if you tell me what you do feel. I feel afraid. I feel ashamed. I feel worried. Those are far more, that language is language that we can far more easily work with together.
That's helpful. Yeah, that's really helpful.
And then we just know that some repairs are going to require ongoing work. Somebody who has an affair that lasts for some period of time, that may be an ongoing repair work that couple does for the rest of their marriage. In ways that, where the wound is over time does not feel as sharp as it used to, but just to acknowledge that when we have repeated non-catastrophic behavioral patterns, like if you're married, there are certain things that you have to learn to, like, what am I going to live with here? How are we going to do that? And then we can have some severe wounds. And we'll get to that, I think, in one of our later episodes about what do we do when there are these kinds of things that take place. Remembering that a repair of a rupture requires the full participation of both, all the parties involved, both the injuring and the injured parties together. Janice Spring, whose book I just love, called After the Affair, she writes about how only one person commits an offense in having an affair. Only one person's having the affair. But both parties must work to repair the wound that has been caused by it. And then we're going to talk more about repentance and forgiveness later on. This is a lot, I realize. We could spend 5 sessions perhaps on this because of each of the sections. But and perhaps we'll find ways to maybe take some of these episodes and break them down and do more like that. But for now, I think we have an application we want to think about. Yeah,
we do. So we want you to think about where you are in the spectrum of fearful avoidance to fearful eagerness. Where do you fall when it comes to repairing ruptures? And what are the fears that remain for you as you consider those with whom you long to make repairs? In what ways has learning about timing, tempo, and time, what ways does that help you feel more hopeful about repairing ruptures? And as always, we want you to consider with whom you might share these insights with that you've gathered, and spend time revealing them to them, the things that you've learned through this process. We're all sort of going through this together, and we are appreciative, Kurt, that you're leading us in this process of rupture and repair, because we really do want to be people of repair. And although sometimes as we go through these things, I think, do I really want to be a person of repair? This is a lot. It is a lot, right? But we do. We do at our core. What we want is to be people of repair. So thank you, Kurt. For those of you who are watching on video, stick around. Amy's going to be joining us, and we're going to continue this conversation with her. So thank you. Love you, Kurt.
Love you, man.
That was great. The thing that struck me as you were talking, like Rupture and Repair. That's the name of our season, right? Mm-hmm. And even in that, it doesn't. There's a lot in between that. And that's what came out today. Like the question, because for me, it's like Rupture, and then perhaps because of anxiety, I want to run to repair. Like, and there's
totally.
I took a deep breath when it was like, okay, these questions, they give us time to get there.
Yeah. Yeah.
And the grief.
Yeah.
Go.
Yeah, just real quick, I think it harkens to me the notion that yes, God is in the business of wanting us to repair the ruptures. Mm-hmm. And I think there's a part of me sometimes that worries, like, oh my gosh, like I've done something wrong. Now I'm in trouble with God for not only for having done the wrong thing, but now I'm in trouble for not having repaired the wrong thing in the right way or fast enough or whatever it is. What's the right way that I'm supposed to repair the rupture? And because I keep thinking that God is like, he's keeping track on his clipboard.
Right, his ledger.
Where's the benchmark? Yeah. And I forget that. Yes, he wants to repair the rupture. And what he is trying to do is to turn us into good repairers.
Oof. Yeah.
And you can't and you cannot rush that.
Well, yeah, that's what what I was going to say is a lot of times I think being a good repairer means just fixing things really fast.
Yeah, get in there, get it done. I'm sorry.
And moving on. Yeah. And sometimes even taking responsibilities for that away from the other person that are not mine because I don't want the conflict.
Yep.
It's a different kind of fitness.
I'm totally guilty of that. Look, I just want to get beyond this. Yep. I don't like that I'm feeling this way. I don't like that you're feeling this way. And so
are we done?
Let's just get past it. Or I'll apologize for something that I don't even really feel right apologizing about, because if I don't, I'm stuck in this and I don't want to be. And I don't like the way this feels. And so if I just do this and I just eat, you know what, then we'll all feel better.
Right.
I'll have a better taste in my mouth.
I'll feel better. I think like an additional thing that is related to that I will do, someone comes and wants to apologize and I were like, oh, no problem.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's okay. No, it's no big deal. It's all good. Yeah, we're all good. Like, because
so
I also that's another way in which, like, I don't want to sit with the discomfort,
right,
of acknowledging of my own hurt,
yes,
of my own discomfort that their apology is bringing up. And here's the thing: if I too quickly dismiss that, like, that doesn't do them any good either.
Right, like if we say it's all good, that's not satisfying to them.
No. Like they need to feel me feeling the hurt so that they can take on the responsibility of what it was really like, in order for me then to fully enter into the process of forgiveness. Fully enter into the process of repair.
Yeah.
So that when the repair moves along, there is confidence on both parties' part that it's really happening. Mm-hmm. And I'm not like, yeah, that's fine, but there is a part of me that knows that we didn't really, like, I'm still pissed. Or I know that I'm not really sure that they know how angry I still am, or whatever.
Right.
It's almost like, okay, I'm going to make myself talk with this person for 10 minutes so that it's like, no, it's not a thing about making it quick. Like, I have to leave some space for feeling uncomfortable, letting them respond. It's all good. Could take about 10 seconds and we're done.
Right.
Is it finished?
Right.
Yeah.
Right. In the work that Harville Hendricks has done, Harville Hendricks has done work on couples marriage and couples work, and one of the things that when they work on these rupture and repair experiences, it's this notion of when we're really trying to understand empathically where the other person is. Mm-hmm. Can you tell me what happened? Yes, I'm going to name what happened, and then we're going to get a clear sense of what that felt like, and we're going to acknowledge that. We're going to validate that. Mm-hmm. And of course, if I'm the one who's the offending party, I'm going to want to say, "Oh, great, that really makes sense," and I just okay, now we're done. Mm-hmm. And one of the beautiful things about Hendrix's model is when he says, "Okay, you've done that," and then you're going to ask the question as the offending party. You're going to ask the question that just like, I'm
not going to like.
The question is, what else have I done that you want to tell me?
Mercy.
What else have I done? Tell me what else. Is there more? What more is it that you want to tell me? Mm. And I think what we find in this in repairing these ruptures is that once we start to practice this, and we discover that I can be empathic, and in being empathic, I can put what I'm feeling just in a container beside me, not in a trash container, but just a place to hold it while I'm being fully present to you to do the repair work. I can oh my gosh, I can be okay. And I will start to immediately see that when I'm being empathic with the other, I start to notice almost immediately the softening on their part. I start to notice the felt sense of greater connection because I've not buried what I'm feeling. But I put it in a container so that we can do the empathic work going in this direction this time. And, for those situations, it often happens where, yes, there is an offending party and an offended party that begins things. But then, things, now both parties are at it, and both parties are going to have things to say that they're sorry about. Both parties are going to have to do, repair work for things that they have done. Yes, one party started it. And, we have this way of, wanting to say, the woman you gave me, right? She started this. This is all Genesis 3. And God's not asking Adam about the woman. God's not asking, he started the fight. He said, no, I'm not asking you about that story. I'm asking you about your story. And so gets back to the very beginning where you say, what belongs to me? What's on my side of the road? Because it's easy for me as the offended party to say, that whole highway belongs to the other person.
Yeah. Okay, I'm mindful of time. I want to say one more thing about the question of what is it that I want. Mm-hmm. I was with Pep, okay, I want there to be repair. I want the da-da-da. And it's important to keep that in mind. But then when you said, what I really want is to be mean. And what I really want is to punish. And and it was that's important to acknowledge. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And it's and I'm not going to give space for that.
Right, and I'm not going to acknowledge that to the person with whom I'm offering the repair.
Buddy. I'm going to say it to my repair buddy.
I'm saying I'm doing this offline with somebody else.
Right.
Who can validate not that slapping this person would be a good thing.
Right.
No, but is validating the felt sense of feeling that I have to help. What they're doing is helping me regulate this.
Right. So that I can show up in a way to actually bring repair.
That's right.
So good. Pep's going to get to try it this week. We're all going to get to, but it's hard work. It's oof. I want Pep to do it.
Oh, man.
All right. It's a great episode. Thank you all. Thank you. Love you.
Thanks, everybody. All right, man. All right.
Next time.
Good to be with you. Yep. Next
time.
Love you
guys. This podcast is produced by Kurt Thompson, Pepper Sweeney, and myself, Amy Chella. Audio production and editing is by Keaton Simons. Video production and editing is done by Mark Gould. If you'd like to connect with us, you can find us on social media at BeingKnownPod. If you like this podcast, tell a friend. If you love this podcast, tell everyone you know. And please rate, and review wherever you listen. Be well, be now.